Okay, so I had a note from a photographer, actually a cinematographer in Toronto, and he was asking me about the 150mm Xenotar lens that I have. Basically, he was just asking me to discuss with him, you know, sort of how it works and what I like and dislike about it, mainly because he was interested in using it for motion picture. I'm not exactly sure how he does that, but he has a rig set up in some way so that he can use large format lenses and get the large format lens feel in a motion picture situation, which I thought was actually rather cool. But one of the things he needed to know was just how flat is the field of focus on the Xenotar, because they can tolerate having subjects moving, but they can't tolerate having subjects moving in terms of pulling focus, moving as well as the plane of focus changing as the subject crosses the frame. So you know, the focus pullers are good, but they're not that good. So what he wanted me to do is he wanted me to photograph a brick wall to see just how the plane of focus was. Field of focus? Anyway, whatever it's called. I don't photograph brick walls, generally. I really, honestly, I don't really care just how much distortion there is in lenses. I mean, I generally try and stay away from lenses that have too much distortion, but I'm, you know, as long as it's pleasing, I've always felt actually that brick wall photographs in terms of a lens test really were a poor representation of what the lens is really all about. I mean, yeah, okay, so it's sharp. You know, what does that matter? So, but anyway, he asked, and so I thought, oh, why not? I've never photographed a brick wall before. So I did a test. North light coming through the windows, onto the wall, bathing it in, well, it's not exactly equal, but that's probably good. My film I'm shooting is 100 ISO, just like that. Time doesn't really matter because it's just on the camera. And so our exposure off the wall, 15th at f4, so 30th at f2.8. First shot is with a Xenotar. Going to focus on that piece of paper in the middle, and then I'll run through 2.8, 5.6 with the Xenotar, f5.6, f11 with the Sironar-N, focusing in the center for the first shot, at the edge for the second shot, on each of them, and that'll be it. And I shot the 150mm f2.8 Xenotar at 2.8 and at 5.6, 2 stops below wide open. And I took 2 frames at each f-stop, one focused in the middle of the frame, one focused on the edge of the frame. And then I did the same thing with 150mm Sironar-N. 150mm f5.6 Sironar-N. So I shot it at 5.6, shot it at f11, and then we processed the film, scanned the film on a Hasselblad X1 scanner. I scanned it in at 16-bit. There was a little tiny bit of input sharpening, but nothing of any major consequence. I basically just dragged the endpoints of the curve, or of the levels, just to get a black point and a white point, and then I made a few JPEGs, which are on the computer. And so as I'm looking at these and discussing them, we'll show them to you. And you know, there's nothing like a brick wall to show you how poor your technique is when it comes to actually taking photographs. Because one thing that became abundantly clear, especially the Xenotar wide open, is that, I mean, I was parallel to the wall, but I think I must have had some sort of a movement in the camera. I'm not entirely sure these tests are actually really worthwhile for anybody, but it was interesting now that I've done it. Because my top right corner is actually really soft in all the images, which makes me think that the lens was tilted a little bit one way or another. But anyway, Xenotar wide open at 2.8, focused in this shot, I believe, was focused on the edge of the frame. And in case you're wondering, no, I did not retouch out the dust, which is why they're all dusty, these negs. And it softens a little bit mid-frame, and then it gets a little bit softer over to the right. So I'm not sure if that's the field of focus or if that's just my limitations in terms of my ability to set up a large format camera. So anyway, so the second one was in the middle, and you can definitely tell it's nice and sharp. in the middle of the frame, and then getting soft towards the edges a little bit. But I have no idea if that's enough or too much. We photographed these from 12 feet away from the wall, and for the Xenotar at 5.6, what you can see is not a very pretty image, but you get some nice contrast, and things are looking pretty good actually across the frame. And the second one at 5.6 is, yeah, so that's where I focused on the edge, and it's a little bit soft in the middle, a little bit soft on the right. But I think it actually looks pretty good. But what I think is really interesting, if you take the 5.6 Xenotar and you put it up against the Sironar at 5.6, the difference is like night and day. The vignetting on the Sironar at 5.6 is horrible. Like, I mean, there's like a stop or more. Now, and I honestly, I haven't, in this shot, if you can believe it, I haven't actually, I didn't do anything to it. I just scanned it in. All 8 images were scanned exactly the same way, same everything. So I didn't touch the settings. I set it up and then I ran all 8 frames through the scanner. So what is really interesting about the Sironar is simply that it is as, wide open is terrible. Now at f11, you can see it's much better. And it's tack sharp. There's no question about that. And with good contrast. I mean, it's a nice lens. At f11, it's a really nice lens. Not really much to say except that the Xenotar is not very sharp, but you do get a sense as to, it's a low contrast lens. It's a really low contrast lens compared to the Sironar. The Xenotar is, when I talk about having mojo, this is what it is. I mean, there's a lot of romance and a lot of warmth in the Xenotar, and the Sironar, especially at f11, is very clinical and really quite, I don't know, it's kind of hard to explain, but it's just, anyway, I'm glad I've got the Xenotar, what can I say? So photographing a brick wall was actually surprisingly useful. I was not expecting the Sironar to be, first of all, to be as contrasty and as sharp, but also as much vignetting. I mean, it's only 4x5. I mean, this thing should adequately cover 4.5 without any problem at all, wide open. I mean, the Xenotar wide open is fine. Well, there's a little bit of vignetting, but really it's not that bad. Here's one thing about doing a lens test or doing any kind of testing, is that invariably when I find that when I actually try and run a test like this, first of all, you end up seeing your glaring errors, but also, and more importantly, you learn things that you never thought you would learn. I mean, what I learned is that the Sironar is really just, I don't know. I mean, it feels very clinical and not necessarily in a good way. The Xenotar is a lot more sympathetic and a lot more me, anyway. What can I say? And the Sironar at 5.6 is pretty much useless. At f11, it's much better, but you've got to stop that thing down. There's no question about that. This one seems to work just fine, wide open, which is, of course, where I keep it. So, anyway, so for what that's worth, there you go. A little lens test of a brick wall, of a cinder block wall, and yeah, so I hope the guy in Toronto finds this useful. I guess I'll find out. I'll send the photos and we'll go from there. Anyway, thanks for watching, and next time around I'll try and show some prettier photos.